Israel and its defenders swear that the IDF has followed the rules of war in their assault on Gaza, that they aren't at war with civilians but laser focused on Hamas, that any civilian deaths are the fault of Hamas for operating within the civilian population, or at the very worst, regrettable mistakes, such as in the case of the 7 World Central Aid Kitchen workers who were killed in that series of 3 drone strikes. The IDF, Israel's defenders say, is the most moral army in the world. A new shocking report from Plus 972 magazine definitively disproves every single one of these claims. Of course, anyone paying attention was fully disabused of these notions long ago. The ratio of civilian to militant deaths alone is sufficient to prove that this war on humanity has been intentional. But Plus 972 once again has provided invaluable insight into the exact mechanisms of the horror. They reveal, for the first time, the details of how Israeli algorithmic targeting supercharged a slaughter, and critically, how the very human decisions made in this assault and desire for total revenge have fueled annihilation and genocide. Now, I urge you to read the entirety of Yuval Abraham's collaboration with Local Call for 972 magazine titled Lavender, the AI machine directing Israel's bombing spree in Gaza. I'm going to summarize the most significant findings, but I believe this will be one of the defining journalistic pieces of this entire onslaught. Every detail of this report really matters, so please, if you have the time, take a look. So here are some of the top-line findings of that report. First of all, Israel has developed an AI targeting system called Lavender, which has been used to generate some 37,000 targets in Gaza. Second, those human targets generated by the algorithm were imprecise, with a known error rate of about 10%. In spite of this high error rate, next to no human checking was performed before targeting individuals on the Lavender list for assassination. IDF soldiers were to consider these faulty AI target lists of alleged militants to be orders. Minors were included on the list along with civil service officers. Third, the IDF authorized extraordinary levels of collateral damage. Officially, 20 civilians per junior Hamas fighter and 100 civilians for higher-level commanders. In practice, though, collateral damage ratios could be even higher. The motive, according to the sources, was not to eliminate Hamas. It was pure and simple revenge. Fourth, contrary to claims about avoiding civilian casualties, Israel intentionally targeted civilians through use of a software program called Where's Daddy, which was used to target the private homes of militants when they were at home with their families and surrounded by other civilians. Little was done to make sure the alleged militant was even actually killed and not just his family members. Now, those are the top-line findings, but it is well worth digging into some of the stomach-churning details here. Gaza has become a testing ground for dystopian AI-driven military tech, which is plunging all of us into a new era of horrors and unchecked barbarism. 972 had previously reported on an AI system called The Gospel, which generates infrastructure targets with a focus on so-called power targets. These are large centers of civilian life, like high-rise apartment buildings, which were destroyed in order to demoralize and terrorize the civilian population. Drone-equipped robot dogs are also increasingly wandering throughout the rubble in Gaza thanks to new developments from the Pentagon and U.S. military contractors. And we can now add to this list of killer tech Lavender, which generates tens of thousands of human targets. And operating hand-in-glove with Lavender is Where's Daddy, software which targets those placed on the Lavender kill list for assassination while they are at their homes with their families. Where's Daddy? Get it? For the IDF, when Daddy's home, it means it's time to murder every man, woman, and child who happens to be in the vicinity. Now, Lavender uses the data collected through mass surveillance of every Palestinian in Gaza to analyze the likelihood that they may be Hamas, based on a list of identified attributes. Every Gazan is given a rating of 1 to 100 as to how likely they are to be a militant. The algorithm is programmed with hundreds or thousands of attributes, which are considered to be suggestive of Hamas or other militant membership. Some attributes identified in the piece include being in the wrong WhatsApp group or changing addresses too often. Now, if you are clocked with too many incriminating features as identified by Lavender, then you'll be placed on a kill list and marked for IDF assassination with next to no human verification. According to a 972 source, quote, "A human being had to verify the target for just a few seconds," B said. "At first, we did checks to ensure that the machine didn't get confused. But at some point, we relied on the automatic system, and we only checked that the target was a man. That was enough. Doesn't take a long time to tell if someone has a male or female voice." This assumption that all men are Hamas has been backed up in recent days by the stunning reporting of Axios reporter Barak Ravid. Now, himself a former IDF soldier, Ravid told Anderson Cooper that on the ground, soldiers were simply told to murder every man.
This incident shouldn't come as a surprise. You remember that just a few weeks ago, 3 Israeli hostages that managed to escape their captors were killed by Israeli soldiers who fired at them even though they were holding a white flag, okay? And I spoke to an Israeli reserve officer who was in the same unit of those soldiers who shot those hostages. And I remember him telling me that the orders are basically from the commanders on the ground is just shoot every man in fighting age. Those are the orders, but that's not the rules of engagement that is coming from the IDF leadership.
But on the ground, that's what they're being told.
The orders are shoot every man of fighting age. So obviously, if you're a man in Gaza, whether or not your name is spat out by Lavender can quickly become a matter of life and death. And yet the generation of these kill lists was arbitrary, based on entirely human judgments about what rating level was sufficient to justify a conclusion that you are very likely Hamas. Is a 65 rating out of 100 in Lavender's AI determination of Hamas-like attributes sufficient to mark you out specifically for death? Does a 78 make you Hamas? A 92? The answer apparently differed at different times during the war. Per a 972 source, quote, "The numbers changed all the time because it depends on where you set the bar of what a Hamas operative is. There were times when a Hamas operative was defined more broadly, and then the machine started bringing us all kinds of civil defense personnel, police officers on whom it would be a shame to waste bombs. They help the Hamas government, but they don't really endanger soldiers." Now, of course, you have to appreciate the concern here for the rationing of bombs, not for the human beings that are being killed. But let's put that aside. So once you've got your Lavender-created kill list, you got to actually figure out how to get these guys. Finding Hamas in a battle space can be difficult and risky, but what's quick and easy is killing them at their known residences when they go back home to their wife and kids. Now, I want you to imagine for a second that a foreign military or terrorist group was targeting our soldiers en masse when they were at home in their private residences, wantonly slaughtering mothers and children for the sake of taking out some anonymous army private. This is the equivalent of what the IDF is doing in Gaza. Per 972 sources, quote, "We were not interested in killing Hamas operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in military activity. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation as a first option. It's much easier to bomb a family's home. The system is built to look for them in these situations." Now contrast this to the language we hear about how the IDF does not target civilians, just Hamas with those darn human shields. Here we have confirmation that the IDF does in fact target civilians by choosing as their first resort to bomb private homes full of women and children. It didn't even particularly matter whether the alleged Lavender kill list militant was there at the time, because the IDF didn't verify that the target was home when the bomb dropped. In plenty of instances, the target had actually left, and the IDF just murdered the family for no apparent reason. Because of this where's daddy strategy, entire families have been routinely annihilated, every name on every branch of the family tree killed. This embrace of civilian slaughter was not haphazard, it was systematized. In Gaza, the IDF authorized acceptable collateral damage levels that were historically extraordinary. Any old, low-level Hamas rank-and-filer could be killed along with 20 civilians. In practice, it could be even higher because the IDF used rule-of-thumb guesswork to determine how many people might be killed, and because they preferred to use so-called dumb bombs to take out these low-level possible soldiers. The IDF did not want to waste expensive precision-guided munitions on inconsequential Hamas peons. Dumb bombs may take out a few houses instead of one, or collapse an entire apartment building instead of having the capability to just target a single floor. As one source told 972, quote, "In practice, the principle of proportionality did not exist." When it came to senior commanders, official guidelines allowed for 100 civilians to be killed in connection with their assassination. But here, too, the reality was that even higher civilian massacres were accepted. Per 972, in order to assassinate Ayman Nofal, the commander of Hamas's Central Gaza Brigade, a source said the army authorized the killing of approximately 300 civilians, destroying several buildings in airstrikes on al-Bureij refugee camp on October 17th, based on an imprecise pinpointing of Nafal. Between 16 to 18 houses were wiped out in the attack. Amr al-Khatib, a resident of the camp, told 972 in local call, "We couldn't tell one apartment from the other. They all got mixed up in the rubble, and we found human body parts everywhere." So for comparison here, the U.S. during the War on Terror typically operated at a non-combatant casualty value, or NCV, the official term for acceptable collateral damage, of 0. Even when targeting Osama bin Laden himself, the NCV was 30. In actual execution of the bin Laden raid, SEAL Team 6 killed 3 bin Laden sons and 1 woman. Now, I am not arguing the U.S. was a paragon of virtuous warfighting and avoided civilian casualties in the War on Terror. But there is no comparison between Israel routinely dropping 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs on crowded refugee camps to maybe take out a single person, and the high-risk operation which we used to kill Osama bin Laden. So let's put the pieces together here. If you classify every military-aged man as a combatant, and you classify every one of his family members as acceptable collateral damage, you have effectively turned an entire population into legitimate military targets. The tech is scary, but the humans making those decisions, driving the tech, they are terrifying. You can see the same logic in the official IDF explanation for why they targeted the World Central Kitchen aid convoy. Just as with Lavender, all it took was the possible presence of one fighting-age male with a gun for every one of those aid workers to be marked for assassination. There's a reason for this, though. Multiple sources made it clear to 972 that in plenty of instances, the real goal was not hunting some Hamas commander or another, it was revenge. Per 972, quote, "There was a completely permissive policy regarding the casualties of bombing operations, so permissive that, in my opinion, it had an element of revenge," D, an intelligence source, claimed. A also used the word revenge to describe the atmosphere inside the army after October 7th. Quote, "No one thought about what to do afterward when the war is over, or how it will be possible to live in Gaza and what they will do with it," A said. "We were told, now we have to F up Hamas, no matter what the cost. Whatever you can, you bomb. Whatever you can, you bomb." There's no turning back from these things. From the AI-generated kill list based on mass surveillance to the normalization of murdering whole families to possibly get one rank-and-file soldier, to the revenge-fueled destruction of every possible piece of civilian infrastructure. Israel's actions in Gaza have opened Pandora's box for new, previously unimaginable horrors. Unchecked brutality with unleashed and unaccountable tech. Saagar, the details here are really—
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them, going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.